new look, a new feel, a new season. The Blancpain Endurance Series gets underway at Monza this weekend as part of what is now the Blancpain GT Series, because the sprint races as well as the endurance will be included in one overall series for this year. 12 races in all, 5 in the Endurance Series. It finishes with the Nürburgring 1000, the Blancpain-backed event in Germany. We have the Spa 24 Hours, of course, as the showpiece event, and on the way, 3 3-hour races at Paul Ricard, Silverstone, and the opener this weekend at a very dry, very sunny, very pleasant Monza. We've had the bronze test yesterday evening, we've had free practice this morning, qualifying is to come later in the day, but now it is pre-qualifying, 90 minutes for the drivers, for the teams to venture out onto the circuit, and up in the booth for John Watson and David Addison to get used to some new liveries, new drivers and new names, John.
Yes, but I think everybody in the pit lane is focused on one thing in particular, and that is economy of tyre use. With 2 sets fewer than we had in 2013, and that means we may not see teams on track all of the 90 minutes of this session because they need to hold back fresh tyres, new sets of tyres for qualifying, very important, but also come Sunday's event, 3 hours around the Monza Park, you want to have the freshest rubber possible. So that's going to be a big change for teams to manage their tyre supplies. And
come the race, I know we're looking ahead a little bit, but fuel is also going to be an issue because ideally you want to try and go to the hour mark before you do the mandatory pit stop, 2 mandatory stops. So if you break it up, stop at the hour or just after, then you're doing well. But without any safety cars, it's going to be a very fast race indeed, and that will take a big effect on the fuel.
And also, I think there's been a small reduction in the maximum amount of time one driver can have in a car, so there's taken, I think, 5 minutes
That's right.
away. So again, it means that the pressure is not so much on the drivers in the cockpit, but the team in the garage or in the motorhomes or wherever they're working out their strategies to ensure, and we talked about this morning, or you did certainly, let's say you're getting close to the point where a driver change is due, there's a safety car intervention, what do?
You have to take it. But then you're in jeopardy of keeping your next driver in for more than the 65 minutes to try and eke out the fuel. Well, you can't do that, so you bring him in early, and then you've got the same problem with your last stint. So the teams are going to have to manage that very carefully indeed, and actually all those factors are outside their control, aren't they?
The one thing that is currently looking wonderful is the Monza spring weather. And if it's like this tomorrow, you couldn't have a better place to start the season with GT racing than coming here to Monza, the cathedral of speed. It's something I christened it many, many years ago. It's one of my favorite racetracks all over the world. It is just magnificent.
And even when it's at the start of a season and Monza is still perhaps recovering from the winter, 1 or 2 bits are a bit scruffy and need some paint, it still has so much soul, so much character. You can forgive the place anything.
Absolutely, because this is old school. In fact, it invented school, not being old school. It is a proper circuit, a proper race track. And although it's had to make changes to accommodate current Formula One technology and thinking, the fundamentals of Monza are unchanged. And even the original banking no longer in use. I think the last time probably used was in the late 60s. It's still in place, and if you've got the time, there it is. Look at it. I mean, could you imagine driving a racing car around that? And in the old days, they used to combine what would you call the street track or the road track with the bank circuit. So you would go down Main Straight and then turn off, go into the banking, then come off the banking, then go down Main Straight for a second time, flat out through the Curva Grande. Nothing like a girly type of chicane to slow the cars down. I mean, this was a racetrack. It still got the essence of that. Not quite as it was for reasons of safety, but what a magnificent venue it is.
If you come to Monza, go and try and stand on that banking for the Monza-Napolis races. It's so steep, it's untrue. Well, the entry is down a touch for this year. We've still got 44 cars for what promises to be an epic race. And you know the format by now if you follow GT racing. They're all to GT3 specification. It's in 3 classes. You've got the Gentleman Trophy, you've got Pro-Am, and you've got the Pro Cup. And there's a good Italian team, the SRO Motorsports BMW, that runs in Pro-Am. 43 is driven by Stefano Comandini, Eugenio Amos, and Stefano Colombo. And all of them have got lots of Italian GT knowledge, and therefore they know Monza pretty well. And we know that the BMW is a good car, but you go and talk to any BMW team and they'll say, oh, well, Monza doesn't work very well at Monza, this car. And yet we've seen them win here in the past.
Yeah, but I mean, Monza is essentially a low downforce circuit, whatever kind of car you're driving on it. So the BMW is a very efficient car in terms of the lower speed circuits where you want that downforce to give you the advantage over your competitors. Come to Monza, all you can do is trim the car out within what is homologated for the car. You can't build a special Monza rear wing, for example, bolt it on and drive your car onto the racetrack. Whatever you've got, is that a car? What is that stuck on the outside?
It's one of the Ferraris, I think. It's the
coming out of the Ascari chicane.
Yeah, it's the American Ferrari. In effect, Jean-Marc Bachelier, Yannick Malagol, and Howard Blanc. He's the American driver in it. It used to carry American colours, but it's that car, I fear, that has come parked by the side of the road. So the BMW you're looking at the moment has yet to really set a proper gun lap time. It's got Stefano Colombo at the wheel of it at the moment. Number 43 BMW powers past the pits. The fastest lap time, and I know we're early in the session, but it's been done by an Audi of the Macanese driver, Andre Couto, who drives for the so-called Brothers Racing Team. It's operated by Stuart Parker's band of merry men, with Frankie Cheng and Zun Sheng, who's got experience of Formula 3 in the Audi R8 Cup in China to his credit, and the former Macau Grand Prix winner Andre Couto is the man that's quickest at the moment, and it was in fact the aforementioned Ferrari. It's got going again, as you can see, but this is the Blanc Bachelier Malagol car that had stopped.
Just a particular paint scheme in the Ferrari, you can see it in the rear view. First time I think I've seen one white, blue and dark blue, just getting a glimpse of the car. Normally we see these cars red predominantly, and it looks so different when you see the graphics on the car.
And that stop happened on its outlap. Jean-Marc Bachelier, the man behind the wheel. Now there is a car that was in strife this morning and is being glued back together again. In the background you can see Claude Gosselin, who is going to take the car over. It's got the renowned stuntman Jean-Claude Lanier and the hugely experienced Marc Soord as the other two drivers. It runs in the Gentleman Trophy. For all of them, quick as they are not in the first flush of youth anymore.
No, they're not. I mean, Sunderlock Racing has been a great supporter of GT racing, but there is the big news story to me of this year's Blancpain Endurance Series. It's the Bentley Continental, run by M Sport. Malcolm Wilson, of course, famous for the efforts of M Sport, primarily as a rally team, but representing Ford. And now with Bentley, and looking forward to seeing these two Bentley Continentals, what they can deliver. Actually, in the garage this morning when they were making a couple of adjustments to the suspension and changing the front roll bars, thick as my wrist. Those roll bars, really, unbelievable.
It's a very understated car. I mean, I know it's big, I know it's got a very distinctive shape, but it doesn't yell at you in the way that one or two others do with their livery. It's totally British.
But the question I have for you, David, is name the new sponsor on the Bentley Continental.
I fess up here, he got me with this earlier on. It is name, John, is it not?
It is. Name is a major name, N-A-I-M, as well as N-A-M-E, in the world of high fidelity, a hobby of mine. And I've been in the past, in fact, I still am an owner of a lot of name equipment. Oh, BMW offered Ascari, and that's not pretty.
No, that's one of the two TDS cars. You can see what it's done to the circuit. He's brought all that rubbish on, so everybody not only has to pick their way through a dust storm, but that is going to be very slippery indeed. So down towards the Parabolica. Now TDS have got two cars. We'll find out in a moment which one that was doing odd things, and just runs out of road, I think.
Well, it just overruns the entry into Ascari, the three-corner Ascari chicane. A really great series of corners, and drags tons of earth onto the racetrack, and of course his car will be choked with it as well. But just to go back, if I may, to the Bentley Continental and their hi-fi or high-fidelity sponsorship, Name have just introduced a brand new amplifier called the Statement. David, it could be yours for a paltry, you might call it Blancpain Enduro budget, $200,000 US.
Oh,
just for the amplification.
I'll have two. I mean,
well, no, you could have two, but I mean, I think right now start with one. There's the Bentley, sponsored by Name High Fidelity, amongst other companies, and keep an eye. Stephen Kane, one of the drivers, countryman of mine, of course, proudly wearing his BRDC badge on his sleeve.
It's a fascinating combination of drivers. You've touched on this by mentioning Stephen, but you've got across the cars Guy Smith, who won Le Mans for Bentley, Stephen Kane, and Andy Merrick, who we've seen driving for Aston Martin in sports car racing. He's come out of single seat, he's very quick in historics as well. And then in the other car, Duncan Tappy, 2 years ago, remember, he was driving a McLaren in this championship and winning his class at Navarra. He's another BRDC member, as is Guy Smith. You've got Antoine Leclerc and former Formula 1 racer Jérôme D'Ambrosio. So drivers from different walks of life, different backgrounds, and it's a very cosmopolitan lineup there.
Well, I mean, I think the one that sort of stands out as being, in a sense, the odd one out is Jérôme D'Ambrosio, because he has been hanging around Grand Prix paddocks and GP2 paddocks for the last 4 or 5 years. And also, in his spare time, taking you or me out of a job. He's been in the commentary booth, adding expert information and insight into a broadcast. Here he is driving a Bentley Continental GT in Blancpain Endurance Series. It's a great place to go motor racing. And if you are a racing driver, male or for that matter, female, claiming you're a racing driver but not sitting behind the wheel, just talking about it, get out there and do some motor racing.
When did you last race, John?
I'm not a racing driver any
okay,
longer.
right. You say I still think
I
you
don't
are.
know. I don't claim to be a racing driver.
You are to legions of people around the world.
Yes, but that's a different thing. My racing days are beyond me, and I love doing what I do because I think sitting in the commentary booth is the next best thing.
Now, looking at Lamborghini, where would we be in the Blancpain Endurance Series without a bit of Italian brio from Lambo? This is the Reiter engineering run car. Yes, of course, Peter Cox is one of the drivers, to ever thus, but the team anticipating, up until Thursday, to be running a Camaro. That had some engine dramas on the dyno, and Hans Reiter and his team wanted to support the event, so they brought the Lamborghini Gallardo instead. Peter Cox, Thomas Enger, and the redoubtable Royal, Prince Albert von Turnant Taxis, the driving combination in this car.
Very strong driver lineup, Peter Cox and Thomas Enger in particular. And we've seen Albert von Turnant Taxis on many occasions turn in sterling, that's with an E, not an I, drives.
He's calmed down, hasn't he, over the years? He can be a bit wild on occasions, but the speed is there for sure.
It definitely is in his genes. And I'm talking about the DNA genes. Think of his family. I mean, German aristocracy are bonkers. And Albert probably fulfills that.
I think you're probably right, yes. Great character. Now, that was the car that was fastest in the session earlier on that he's coasting, the one that I was talking about, the brothers racing car. It's had a spin, in fact, with... Is it still Andre Couto at the wheel? Yes, it is. Andre Couto, former Macau Grand Prix winner. This is the replay of it, and what does he do wrong, John? Whacks the curb? No, he just loses the back.
Well, the back end, he just lets the back end get out, and really, it looked just a little bit too much right foot before the car was really settled at the apex of the corner. And once the car had gone, the pendulum effect took over. And these are heavy cars, so once that weight starts to shift, then there's not an awful lot. And if you do try to guide it on the steering wheel and on the throttle, very often it'll snap back and bite you, but no harm done to the car.
Very smart livery on that car. You're looking at another quick Ferrari, which is heading down towards the Parabolica. This is 458. Best number for the 458 you could have. It's the Alexander Mapshall, Frank Schmickler, Pierre Eric car, all of whom are drivers that we have seen in the championship before, albeit in the case of Alexander Mapshall only once. That was at the back end of last year. He's only ever done track days in the VLN, but now stepping up for a full season. Frank Schmickler, former DTM racer quite a long time ago, and Pierre Eric, another quick amateur, and they're in the Gentleman Trophy. And as the car brakes for the chicane, it doesn't half bounce and weave.
Yeah, it was a little bit unstable, the car, the front of the car moving around there. You can see again the back end of the car. Now, I'm saying maybe the car's at fault. Maybe it's not the car. Maybe there's a little bit too much effort going into the steering wheel, too much effort going onto the brake pedal, and it's a lot of correction going on where really you want to try and smooth that out and let the car do the job.
It's good to have this team moving from the VLN into the Blancpain Endurance Series 4 this year. Very, very smart paint job as well on that. Nice to see something other than a red Ferrari. We've talked about blue and white ones. Now there's the very green Ferrari.
Yeah, I was watching a bit of golf from the US Masters the other evening, and Lee Westwood was wearing a very similar coloured shirt. It did stand out on the golf course. Even that colour of green on the golf course did that.
Just the right hue. It's coming up behind British Racing Green, adorning the flanks of one of the two Bentleys. Where are they in the times, you may well ask? Well, Duncan Tappy is the quicker of the Bentley drivers at the moment, and Andy Merrick is in the other car, which in fact is in the pit lane. So there's only one on track for the moment, Duncan Tappy. Good to have Duncan back in a seat for the season. He found himself on the sidelines at the start of last year, ended up with a drive for Von Ryan in the British GT Championship, but there is the Bentley, Duncan Tappy at the wheel of it. He's another very keen golfer, isn't he? Regularly wins BRDC golf events, I noticed.
I mean, there's a lot of young British drivers around who are all in the same situation, i.e. they're racing drivers looking for work. And Duncan served his apprenticeship through the junior formula and has moved into GT with Davy Ryan and his Von Ryan racing McLaren last year. A suitable young driver, does all the right things, knows the right things to say, behaves himself. He doesn't go out in the lash too often. And if he does, he doesn't get caught out.
And there's another one that we'll talk about, no doubt, during either this session or certainly the race, and that's James Nash, who's been driving in the World Touring Car Championship, but now comes to the Belgian Audi Club Team WRT ranks into sports car racing, and he's exactly the same. You know, he's quick, he's presentable, he says the right things, he's a good young driver with a good future.
Yeah, I think he's going to find it difficult, though, don't you? I mean, World Touring Car Championship races last little more than the blink of an eye. I think it's a world title beyond me. And of course, this is a 3-hour race, so whether one driver will do literally the 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour, whichever way it works out. But it's quite a different stint compared to doing a very brief, crash bang wallop of a World Touring Car Championship. Yeah. And crash bang wallop in this racing is not the way forward.
Definitely not. No, I agree with that. So we'll see how James shapes up. He's saying for this weekend, I'm to learn and haven't had that much time in the car. So we'll see.
That means he's going to go at it 100%, flat out, full commitment. Anybody that says, I'm here to learn, I'm going to watch, I'm going to listen to my teammates, take it all on board, close the door, wallop.
Like the blue touch paper and stand back.
Absolutely.
We're a bit low on Porsches, John, this year. I know you're a Porsche fan.
Oh, don't start on me,
We've
please.
only got 2, I'm sorry.
Don't start.
But we have got more Astons.
It's the 51st anniversary of the 911. Surely somebody's got to have the grace to drag a couple of GT3s out.
Well, there you've got 93 into the pit lane, which is the Eric Dermont Franck Pereira car. Very quick when Franck's behind the wheel of it. Eric Dermont is the AM in that Pro-Am combination.
Yeah, just a duo, 2 drivers in the car, and really for a 3-hour race. I mean, how are they going to get around that? Of course, it's only a maximum per stint. And look at the Aston really, again, snaking coming down into the chicane at the end of the pit straight.
This is a dark horse, I reckon, in Pro-Am. You've got behind the wheel of it at the moment Richard Abra, who doesn't really get the recognition he deserves. He flies under the radar in the UK. Joe Osborne is another driver.
Is he another helicopter pilot?
Not that low. A Mark Poole, who is quick, and he's the bill payer. And they may not be class winners this weekend, but I reckon this car, which went so well, remember, at Silverstone last year, the only other BES race they've done, I think that could be a dark horse for a podium in class. That's one to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I remember certainly at Silverstone last year, Aston used the rule book very cleverly, which to some of the more regular competitors they felt was not quite motor racing. Whether the Aston has got the same level of insight, use of technology, whatever, it'll be interesting to see. It was a brilliant car at Silverstone, and who can forget the domination of the Gulf Aston Martin.
Well, this is a Barwell-run car. It's not a factory effort as such, but you've got good drivers in it, a good team running it. So, as I say, it's one to watch over the course of the race. Is Richard Abra, I said, didn't I, driving it at the moment. Richard doesn't know Monza all that well, but he's doing a pretty decent job. He's 7th in class at the moment.
Well, he looks like he knows his way around the racetrack sufficiently well, because just watching the Aston coming through the Ascari chicane, the car looked poised, the driver looked like he knew where he wanted to point the car, and he had the car attitude pretty much as I would think. That's looking good to me.
Great shape, that car. There's another Aston that's new to the championship this year for the Oman racing team. It comes from a squad based in Rootham in Kent, obviously. Where else would you find the Oman racing team? In other words, motor-based, David Bartram's team. But 38, the MP Motorsport car, Mark Poole car, comes down the pit road. And this session is 90 minutes long. We've had the first 20 or so. And it doesn't affect the grid. It's a chance to cycle all the drivers through to try and give them some track time, and also to try and get everything set up ready for qualifying and for the race.
Laurens van Thor and the WRT Audi currently quickest, just about matching the time that was set a little bit earlier in that practice session this morning. Again, I think everybody, they want to give each of the 3 drivers, or in some cases just 2 drivers, cycle them through, get them into that rhythm that is so important for an endurance race, but to try and do it, as I mentioned before, as economically on your Pirelli tyres.
Now, this is an interesting little drag match, isn't it? Audi versus BMW. You're looking at Audi number 3, which has got Frank Stippler at the wheel of it at the moment. Frank Stippler, we know, is a hero in these cars, from not just Blancpain, but also his heroic effort 2 years ago in the Spa 24 Hours, and his drives in the GT1 World Championship. So, number 1 Audi, John just talked about. Laurens van Thor is the gun in that car. This is number 3 Audi, with James Nash and Christopher Mies as the other drivers of it. And this, again, is very much a potential winner. The car, in terms of times, currently is 5th in class, and it is therefore 10th overall. Car number 3 Audi then. Frank Stippler, another hugely experienced driver, not just of modern GT cars, but he's still very quick in historics, in Marcus von Ernhausen's fleet of Jaguar E-types or Alex Ferrari's Alfa Romeos, for example, he finds something to race just about every weekend with Frank Stippler.
And my friend David Fitzsimmons' Alfa Romeos
indeed,
as well.
Yes,
and it is actually David who owns the Alfa GTA that I watched Frank Stippler, albeit on television. Absolutely phenomenal drive at the Goodwood Revival in the touring car race. And that little GTA, I want one of those babies. I think they're gorgeous.
All Alphas are gorgeous, John.
From a man who is a Nissan driver these days.
Who?
You're still an Alpha driver?
Oh, absolutely.
A 147?
Yeah, no, Mito. A Mito and a Spider is the current fleet, yes.
Is it the twin or is it the proper four-cylinder job?
Proper four-cylinder, turbo, terribly nice. The Mito and the 2-litre Spider. Anyway, we digress, because Audis are what we're looking at. Number 1 has gone back out again, the Laurens Vanthoor car, with Marc Bosseng at the wheel of it now. Former GT1 world champion. And over the timing line goes number 3. Where does that slot Frank Stippler? Does he improve? He does, but he stays where he was pretty much, at 49.6. So he's over a second slower than Laurens Vanthoor. Vincent Voss in the middle of the huddle there, the driving force behind T&WRT.
Interesting, just watching the sector times. The Kessel Racing Ferrari of Giacomo Petrobelli, fastest in that middle sector, but the lap time hasn't reflected the pace. Down in 6th place.
Yeah, Petrobelli back in the championship, having had a really awful time last season. Drama here, the car caught fire at Silverstone, and then he backed away from the championship. So a new team and new optimism, hopefully, for him. Number 19 is another one to watch. Hubert Haupt, Abdulaziz Al-Faisal and Andreas Simonsen. And the Mercedes, run by the Black Falcon team, has got Hubert Haupt at the wheel of it. If you've got a very long memory, you might remember Hubert Haupt in the DTM in the late 80s, early 90s. And then he had a few years away from the sport, has come back as a quick non-career driver, should we put it like that. He can still deliver, but he's not chasing the dream anymore. He's had a successful business life as well.
Well, ultimately, that's where, if you're not getting the drives you want, that's where you've got to move into.
That's the sister car, walloping the curb and running wide, number 18, with Vladimir Lunkin at the wheel. That's a car that runs in the Pro-Am category. Lunkin, Yuri Loboda and Mikhail Loboda come out of Russian touring car races. So it's a busy old grid. Now, off to the Oman. I told you that we had another Aston. 44 you caught a glimpse of there. The Ahmad Al-Harthi, Michael Caine, Stephen Jelly car. And who's behind the wheel of it at the moment? It is the Omani himself, Ahmad Al-Harthi, who was a class winner last year, if you remember, at Silverstone, when he drove with Miro Konopka in the Porsche. Absolutely.
Indeed. One of the few times that we had a Porsche. I know it won its class.
That's right.
Albeit in the pit lane, I think. Was it in the pit lane? It wasn't healthy at the end, I know that.
I think you're right about that. Yes, it was walking wounded. But this is a car new to the championship, new team as well. If you follow touring car racing and you look at chewing gum pots, the Airways Racing Ford Focuses, it's the same team, Motorbase, that runs this car. And Michael Caine, who with Ahmad Al-Harthi races in British GT. Michael was British GT champion 2 years ago. And Stephen Jelly, the third driver, again, very quick, John, came out of Formula 3 in touring cars and Porsches.
Yep, and did some GT racing last year as well.
That's
so
right.
Stephen Jelly, a young man, tall, lean, but fits into one of these cars without any difficulty whatsoever. And driving for Aston Martin, again, you talked about the other Aston, that it's potentially one of the dark sheep for the race. Stephen Jelly's car got to be there as well.
Absolutely right. It's a team that's still learning about doing very long races. They have done 3-hour races, in fairness, within the British Championship, but signing up for a whole season and a different way of doing things in an international championship. It's BRSCC logo on the side as well for the runs in the UK. So coming up then towards the timing line, Ahmad Al-Harthi at the moment is 19th fastest. He did improve last time, as you might anticipate, as the fuel load comes down. He's now being pushed down the order, but he improves on his next passing of the timing line. And that's going to put him...
He moved up about 4 places.
Yeah, about 14th, looking at the side of the screen. There is Michael Caine with his drink, Stephen Jelly with his crash helmet, and the lithe frame of David Bartram in the middle.
Okay, boys, we want a 48 here for the team.
That's the team talk. Come on, guys, go quicker. But David himself used to race very successfully in saloon cars. Started off his racing career in the Ford P100 Pickup Championship in the late 80s, which was not one of Britain's most successful categories, it has to be said. Now, 85 Mercedes brings more Russian influence to the grid, because in it you've got Sergei Afanasiev, along with Lukas Wolf, the German, and Stef Dusseldorp, who we get used to seeing in McLarens. Well, with Hexis having withdrawn as a team, where does he go? He goes to HTP, the team that took Max Buch to last year's title. Seems like a good idea.
Yeah, it's a good car, good team, and Mercedes SLS last year, 24-hour races, 1,000-kilometer races, whatever, unbeatable.
Absolutely.
Maybe Maximilian Buch had a lot to do with it. Probably Bernd Schneider had everything to do with it. But the point is, these cars just run and run and run. And
I spoke to Max Buch yesterday and I said, you won the championship last year having only done 3 races. Are you going to do all 5 this year, or are you still working part-time? And he said, well, it might be a challenge to try and win it by just doing 2, really. But I think they are going to do the whole season, which would be good. Max Buch will come to, no doubt, but just to touch on his co-drivers for a moment, because he doesn't have Bernd Schneider with him. He has Nico Verdonk, who's had a win in this championship before, and Harold Prima, who we know is an experienced driver. He's been around the block quite a few times now in sports car racing. He's been a sports car driver for many, many seasons. So again, an interesting combination of drivers there. 85 Mercedes, hunting down the times to find it. Is not shining. It's only 26th at the moment with Afanasiev at the wheel of it. It's good to have the Mercedes, though, coming back into the championship. Great shot there of the different shapes and sizes. Mercedes, Bentley and Ferrari.
the 2 front-engine GT cars, certainly the Bentley is the proper GT car amongst that trio. The SLS is a Grand Tourer, whereas the Ferrari is a out-and-out hot rod, and basically the balance of performance, which is what brings this series together and so successfully, is providing us with different configurations. In fact, the Mercedes is almost a mid-engine GT car. The Bentley's engine also well back in the chassis, being a V8, not the W12, which is the initial engine configuration. Still available in the Bentley, but it's the V8 engine, which is part and effect. Probably not a million miles dissimilar to what might be in the back of an Audi.
Probably right, actually, yes. Just a quick word about the M Sport team. John talked about them earlier on, rightly saying that they're all from Malcolm Wilson's team, which has its background in rallying. He's taken on no new personnel for the purposes of mechanics to go racing. They're all people that engineer rally cars. It must make a very nice change for them to be in a nice, dry, solid pit lane, not a big puddle in the middle of Wales or somewhere. John Wickham has been brought in to oversee it all with his wealth of experience. So, the drivers are playing down a win. I think a podium for one Bentley could be on.
It'll be a big ask to take a podium in your first event, but if they've got reliability, and I'm sure they will have a reliability. Alistair McQueen is performance engineer director with the Bentley team, and he was with me many, many years ago, back in the days of Jaguar and Group C days, so he understands what is required. Building a car from scratch, as they've done, they really are probably short on the amount of development that, let's say, Audi, Mercedes and other teams out there have got. But nonetheless, they will be competitive, and if they can get that car to the finish, well, the podium, be a great effort.
Would, wouldn't it? Absolutely. This car has been a feature of Blancpain for the last 2 seasons. The Danish Ferrari, Dennis Anderson, Martin Jensen. It's operated from an American base. Martin's done a lot of his racing in the States, and he and Dennis Anderson met as rivals in the Ferrari Challenge a few years ago, and Dennis Anderson said to Martin, I'd like to improve my driving, can you do some coaching with me? And the relationship blossomed, and now they are in their 3rd season of Blancpain together. It's a new car brought in at the end of last season. Their original car, you might remember, was destroyed at Spa in the 24 hours when Ian Dockrell was driving and collided with Enzo Ida's Audi. It was a very big accident, but here are 2 stalwarts of Blancpain, and they've just quietly got on with the job, worked their way up the order, and Dennis said to me yesterday in an interview, the first ambition is a podium. We got 5th here last year. We felt we should have been 4th, so yes, we want a podium, and then during the season we really want to chase that win. But they're being realistic about the ambitions, but it would be good to see one of the underdog teams finally get on that podium.
A word of advice, they could do with shortening the team's entrance name,
which is
Insight Racing with Flexbox. I've never heard of a team called Insight Racing with Flexbox. Let's have it ITF or something. I mean, it's a mouthful. That's a mouthful.
This is the RE Lamborghini, the Writer Engineering Lamborghini, and Peter Cox, I think, is getting out to put, you saw him standing by the car a moment ago, Albert von Turnant Taxis, into it. But you see again, even with 44 cars, how busy the pit lane is, because TDS can't get its BMW out.
Well, I think you have to be positive, David, and say it is easier than it was in 2013.
Yeah, that's true.
It's something like, what, 55 or 56 something. It is a problem at Monza. I mean, even as large as the pit lane is when a car comes in, and they're not parked echelon fashion, they just drive in and stop, as we see the Writer Lamborghini. Now there's a car that was very, very impressive here last year.
One of the two Nissans. Again, you've got the current crop of PlayStation Academy winners with a pro driver in each car. So Alex Buncombe drives in one, and you have Katsumasa Chiyo, who's done a lot of Japanese GT racing, as the pro in the other, and then the regional winners of the 2013 PlayStation Academy join in. And car 80 out on track at the moment, not shining in the times, but it's not essential so to do in this session.
Yeah, with Alex Buncombe as the professional driver in that car, that will be a competitive car. Assuming that Alex Buncombe is the driver in the car for qualification, then you'd expect to see that Nissan. And they've been given, I believe, a little bit more relief on their turbo boost. They've been given a notch more just to... It's something that the pit lane again was mentioning this morning. That's a car which we are... Okay, maybe the strength of the team will be the Alex Buncombe end of it, or his Japanese colleague, whereas the amateurs may not necessarily be able to deliver, but potentially a very quick car.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we found last year, didn't we, that the car became more competitive over a race as the season worked on and the new drivers gained more experience. It's the American Nick McMillan in the car at the moment, and he was a Monza. He walked the track. He's done it on a simulator, but now he's doing it for real. And so as the drivers get more used to it, so the results for the team as a whole will come. We know, for example, yes, Alex Buncombe's going to be very, very strong in his individual stint. This is Harold Primat at the wheel of 84 Mercedes, which is the Max Buch car, the reigning champions car. And the third driver, we touched on it a little while ago, but just to remind you, is Nico Verdonk, who's only missed one race ever in the history of Blancpain. He's been another real stalwart. Variety of cars he's driven over the years, McLarens, Ferraris, now Mercedes. And the Nissan getting all squirmy in the background.
Yeah, coming out of the second Lesmo, the back end of the Nissan decided to lose grip, and it stepped out, but not a problem. It was in control. But again, everybody using the tyre, literally they've got so few sets now compared to previous seasons. They're having to run down to the lowest level possible, and that was maybe an indication just that Nissan on this set of tyres coming to the end of its useful life.
We've still not had everybody venturing out to do a lap time, and I think this goes back to John's point of earlier about the need to preserve tyres. We've got 44 cars here. We've had 38 on track, 37 have done time. So the team's doing different things within this session as they need to do. And we've got still Christopher Haas's, still number one, I should say, Mark Besseng's time as the best. Marco Seefried's Ferrari now second fastest, number 333, and Ferrari third as well, because Stefano Gai in the Scuderia Viola Corsa car is third fastest.
Just when Mark Besseng, I mean, a very, very versatile driver. I came in touch with him when he was driving Lamborghinis, and then he moved into front-engine Seat World Touring cars. I think he drove an SLS Mercedes last year. Now he's in an Audi R8.
And he delivers in anything as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he's charming. He's
Yes.
helpful, insightful. I mean, a really good, rounded guy.
Came via the German Carrera Cup route, like so many of the German drivers did. Kramer Racing's Ferrari you're looking at. Now, what's this in replay? Way wide goes. I mentioned him a moment ago, Marco Seefried, second fastest.
Now, that had happened in 1981. That's out of Lesmo 1, I'm sorry. If that was Lesmo 2 in 1981, he would have been in the barrier like I was.
Well, you were, yes.
But it was Lesmo 1. Just a very tight picture and a little bit too clean to get that reference in.
That was your two-part McLaren, wasn't it, by the end of that drama? There was a bit on one side and a big bit on the other.
Two-pack.
Marco Seefried thought about pitting and then thought better of it.
Strange. I wonder, was that... Now, that potentially could be an infringement, because you're not meant to do that. You know, fade off to the right to go into the pit lane, then actually go across the pit lane demarcation line. I think that's something maybe stewards might want to say, come and talk to us about it, please.
Would that be driver and team getting in a bit of a muddle together? The team saying, stay out, the driver thinking he should come in, and it was a late call on the radio, maybe?
Or maybe he was looking down and making an adjustment and, oh, sorry.
Yes. To his name
We
stereo
don't know,
system.
but certainly, no, that was the Ferrari, doesn't carry a name system, it's got its own version.
Charming Italian one, no doubt. Steve Earle's Ferrari you're looking at as well, 111. Freddie Kramer and Daniele Perfetti is the third driver of this car. Quick word about Daniele, because he was the British GT champion 2 years ago, the Italian driver. He, having won the British GT championship in a Porsche, decided to go and race a Renault Clio last season. And having done that and incurred many a dented body panel, has decided to do something different for this year. But he hasn't made his mind up as what yet. So 2 days ago, he got on the phone and decided he'd come and race a Ferrari for the weekend, as you do.
I mean, if you want to go and race Renault Clios, it's like saying, just come and beat me up at any opportunity you've got.
There is Daniele Perfetti in the yellow overalls, the sweet magnate. Chupa Chups and Frutella sweets are all part of his empire. That is 333 having its second gravelly moment.
And I think there may be, looked like the left rear was beginning to look ragged, or whether there was something dragging in the back of the car. There is indeed something dragging in the back of the car.
He's going for another moment. He's on dirty tyres, isn't he?
Yeah, the deflectors at the rear of the diffuser look slightly out of shape to me.
I agree. It's interesting as well, John, watching this, because I've talked about Marco Seefried having taken the car to second fastest. It's drawn attention to itself recently because of its dramas. It's now got one of the AMs at the wheel of it in Vadim Kogai. Now, here's an example of how your race can be affected by your co-driver who's on the verge of another moment at the first chicane. Marco Seefried, we know he's quick, he's done a good job. Put another driver into the car who just is not at that level, and suddenly it's got a different complexion altogether.
Is he another product of the Russian touring car championship scene?
Yes.
Driving ladders is not the same around a racetrack in Russia as it is coming to Monza, one of the greatest all-time racetracks in the world, in a car synonymous with Monza.
And the more he goes offline, the more guns he's going to pick up on those tyres, and therefore the more he will go offline. And it's just a vicious circle, this. Oh, in the background, Ahmed Al-Harthi getting all sideways.
Yeah, the Aston, again, just about kept it off. The trouble is you run the curve and the exit of the second chicane, it just drops you into that gravel, and then all sorts of issues can arise.
It's not if, it's when the next moment's going to come out of that car. And I think now Vadim Kogai has abandoned all hope.
Well, there's a wave yellow flag somewhere further on the racetrack, I think. Or that was just a wave flag. Whatever it was, anyway, the Ferrari dropped right out of it.
Yeah.
And whether he just felt the pressure of the cars behind him, wanted to be a big, brave move up the inside into the Ascari chicane.
Well, his last lap, which I know wasn't very tidy, but it was 4 seconds off the best that Marco Seefried had done in that same car. Go figure. Do the math, as they say. Now, how's the Oman Aston doing in the hands of... It's now Stephen Jelly, in fact, at the wheel. So that wobble was a Jelly wobble we saw coming out of the chicane a little moment ago.
Again, going into Parabolica, the car, the back end just initially at apex, wanting to get away. Stephen Jelly gets it into control and makes a good exit out of the long Parabolica corner. The corner that starts, it's almost in distance, it's about 400 meters long. It's a long, you've got a very early apex, and you run it very wide, and then you let it just sort of float all the way hard on the throttle, pulling gears as you're accelerating out of the corner. Great corner, wonderful, wonderful corner to drive.
And unchanged pretty much, isn't it, over the years?
Pretty much. I mean, the only change has been to the outside of the corner where they've extended the runoff areas, and the Porsche gets it wrong down at the first chicane.
Talking of runoff areas, and that's what you're meant to do. If you get it wrong, don't try and fight the car and turn it in and risk an accident. Just go up the escape road. That's what it's there for. The drivers were told this at the drivers' briefing yesterday. New race director as well for this year in Alain Adam, another experienced race director who's in charge of the Endurance Series for this year. That was the Eric Dermont Franck Pereira Porsche that straight on. And he's back on track. And Franck Pereira at the wheel of it, so he doesn't often do things like that. In fact, when I unearthed him this morning for an interview, he was busy on his computer watching onboard laps, studying all the data and looking at lines. Well, he didn't look at the chicane, clearly, because that was the bit he got wrong.
Why would a driver who's experienced want to do all that? I mean, surely you've got to think of a brain. You just plug into it and you say, last time I raced here, it hasn't changed.
I did this, and that.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Now, how are other teams faring? That's the McLaren of the Boots and Gignon team, 15, which is Karim Auger, Olivier Grotz and Frédéric Verviche. Another mixture. Frederic is a class winner. Carrie Moget is an experienced quick am, and Olivier Grotz recently out of karting.
Now, have we seen, certainly I don't think we have so far on screen this morning, the two ART Grand Prix McLarens?
Not yet.
With particularly Alvaro Parent and Andy Suchek in sister cars, Gregoire de Moussier, Alex Primat, Kevin Esther, who was stunning, absolutely mind-boggling in Baku at the final sprint, Blancpain Sprint, and so stunning, he got a factory drive as well.
He's always been good in Porsches, Kevin Est, but people sometimes get pigeonholed as being one-trick ponies, good in one type of GT car only, and that did him, as you say, a huge amount of good, proving how good he is in something else.
But also, in a sense, proved just what a great car the McLaren can be.
Yes. Was it dominated in Baku in City Challenge days as well? Different circuit, I know, but it seems to go well out there.
It came back when the race was finished. It was literally, I mean, battered, bruised, carbon fibre. How the car actually got to the finish, but nonetheless, in Baku, phenomenal event, great racetrack, and Kevin Estre established himself in the way that a racing driver can do with one really good effort. And Stephen Jelly makes a complete jelly of it. I mean, that was not really what you'd expect. Down the inside, slightly offline, dirty line, a little bit too quick, and he had just to go straight on.
And that's Bentley number 8 once again. You can see which has been in and out of the pits of late and has tumbled down to 22nd in the times. Duncan Tappy shown as still being at the wheel of that car.
It is a physically imposing car. I mean, it is a large car. But again, with balance of performance, that's irrelevant because it's all about trying to equalize the different brands to come to a level where they're all effectively capable of running at the same speed. I mean, like it rode the curb, it's pretty stiff at the front. You can see just the way the car, but you need a physically stiff car because of the mass. Particularly where the body might start to get into a roll. So looks like it's got a roll stiffness of the Bentley is pretty high.
It's great to have the name back in sports car racing, in GT racing particularly. The car seen in the Abu Dhabi 12 hours at the back end of last year, but it's still in the infancy of the project. But I mean, here is one of the great historic names, isn't it?
Yeah, one of the things maybe is rather sad is one of Bentley's ambassadors, 5-time Le Mans winner Derek Bell, not here this weekend. And of course, everybody misses Derek telling us innumerable times how we had dinner with Steve McQueen in LA and his lovely wife at the time. I mean, you know, I think probably it's the best known story in motorsport.
No doubt he will be at Silverstone. Perhaps might tell us that.
Well, we have to wait and see. I'm not entirely sure. Let's look again. And again, there you get an indication.
That's a big whack, isn't it?
That is good whack, but
yeah.
You know, the car is what I would call a very tight car. It's the roll stiffness of the car is very high indeed. To control the mass, because if you let that mass get out of control, then the car will be much slower.
Duncan Tappy, curb happy.
Yep.
Gets it right for the rest of the chicane, powers on, and he improved, in fact, on that last lap, yes, despite the curb, or maybe because of the curb, he went slightly quicker, so 21st is that car. Now there, I think he wanted an ART Grand Prix McLaren. There's one nestling in this great traffic jam coming down to the chicane. Confusingly, in different colours.
Yes, it is.
This year.
Looking for the familiar colours, but
that's one of the Buxton cars, in fairness, but you've got ART in the mix somewhere.
98, 99.
Yeah. Dust settling from out of the chicane. Isn't that a great shot, though? Just a full straight of different cars.
Archetypical Monza. Cars coming out of the Ascari chicane. First time I raced at Monza in 1971, there wasn't a chicane at Ascari. Formula 2, and Monza was known in those days as being the slipstream racetrack, really for whatever it might have been. Formula 1, Formula 2, even in the great days of sports prototype racing. GT40s and Ferrari P2s, 3s, 4s. My favourite, of course, the wonderful Porsches.
Yes.
But only probably about 2 litres. They hadn't really gone into the 908s at that stage. They just got into the 908s around about 1968, 69.
The 917 was still to come.
The 917 was still waiting to scare whatever, the bejesus out of anybody who ever drove one before John Wire on Gulf Racing got its hands on it and made an aerodynamic change which transformed the car into the great winning car it became.
Probably one of the best storytellers of that era is Brian Redman, isn't it? He's got some great tales of coming out with his knuckles white.
Did he have dinner with Steve McQueen as well?
He hasn't told me that.
Well, I better find that one out.
We're at the halfway point of the session, which hasn't really shuffled the order too much. That's why we told you too much about the times, although one cheer should be reserved for Bentley 7, which has gone sixth fastest now, courtesy of Stephen Kane.
Good man, Stephen Kane. Again, we don't know what configuration the car has been in, whether they've had a fresh set of tyres or whether it's just down to Stephen Kane's ability behind the wheel, but certainly encouraging. And in fact, looking at the times a little bit earlier this morning, Bentley were up in 5th place. Guy Smith did a time 1:48.6. Let's look at Stephen Kane, 1:48.09. Stephen's gone slightly quicker. So that's a competitive time.
It is. It bodes well. Interesting to see, given where that's 1/6, I say Duncan Tapper's car 21st and back in the pits, whether they're doing different things on setup at the moment and whether they'll then study the data and bring the two cars together or allow each car to go its own way. Interesting to see how the teams are attacking this, because they are still developing. They need to learn as much as they need to win for the podium. So we're into part 2, as it were, the second half of this session, and again the Variante Ascari is catching out 1 or 2. Let's see what dramas before the Ferrari here of Alessandro Bonaccini.
Looks okay. Oh, a bit aggressive, but seems to get away with it. The Kessel Ferrari rode the curb pretty well, and you can see that the Ferrari maybe not quite so stiff. Oh, and there's a problem in the barriers. Is that a McLaren?
That's a proper off. I've got a horrible feeling that's ART type McLaren. Let's just see.
Trying to get a view as to where on the racetrack. I think I'd like to be out of the Ascari chicane. It's hard to tell. It's a very tight camera angle.
So I was fearful it might have been parabolic, but you might be right. Let's see in a moment when the car's door opens. It's one of the Boots and Gignon cars, in fact. It's 15, the Auger Grutz Verviche car.
Grutz is the driver currently in the car.
Indeed.
So the car going to be removed safely. Just hard to tell. Oh, it is, you're right. Very early in the Parabolica. No, yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's very early in the Parabolica. So we might, probably, maybe we get another view of it. Looks to me like he got it all wrong under brakes, because to go off, that's almost effectively as if you're going off almost in a straight line. So something would have gone wrong under braking for the McLaren. Or just a driver got it wrong. What would you hear drivers admitting to getting it wrong? Understand regularity that we should sometimes teams like this might be a bit of license in part of the drive. Would I ever say that?
I was just thinking of a Birmingham-based man in Formula One who used to have his own version of the event, didn't he? If things went wrong.
He did. And he made a career of it. And a world championship.
Championship to boot. Well, that's a very dusty McLaren.
I wonder, is there a left rear wheel, or is it something we're not seeing clearly? There's the straight that led down into the Parabolica.
Bit of tyre go down. Now, you wanted an ART McLaren. There was one, and there's the Santiloc Audi behind it. So 98, I think we're looking at, which is the Demoustier Prema Parent car. And it was Alvaro Parent at the wheel of it. Let's see.
Let's see how Al manages to negotiate the Parabolica. He doesn't have any trouble on the entry to the corner.
It's Alexandre Prema, in fact, who's now taking it over. Back from his 2 years of racing V8 supercars in Australia. It's very different sorts of circuits here to there.
So 48.002 is the Audi time to beat, and a 150.6. I don't think it means... frankly, this session is not going to be about who is quickest, although somebody has to be.
Yeah.
Right now it's Marc Bessang in the Audi, WRT Audi. It's going to be about, and a pretty aggressive entry into the first chicane. It's really just giving drivers time in the car, just build a rhythm, get familiar with the idiosyncrasies of the circuit. Circuit, of course, is changing, although there's been a GT event as well as a Euro Super V8, whatever they call that, Italian hybrid saloon series here a week or so ago. So the track has had use, but in relative terms, it's still relatively green.
So 1 or 2 drivers to their new cars as well. Alexandre Prema, for example, doesn't know the McLaren, doesn't really know GT racing after his DTM career came to a rather sticky end. Off he went to Australia and didn't really shine out there. He had 1 or 2 good days, but
It's a very, very tough series in Australia.
it is, absolutely, yeah.
And believe me, the drivers that race the Super V8s out in Australia are second only to NASCAR guys in knowing how to duff you up.
But they're so nice out of the car. Bit of curb habit.
They're not actually. Not really.
Oh, I think pretty decent bunch. 1 or 2 can be good. Russell Ingall's in hot water, isn't he, at the moment?
Oh,
For all
there you
sorts
go.
of great comments.
I mean, Russell's comments. I mean, Russell, a driver almost of my generation, shoots from the lip as well as the hip. And he made some comments, probably not directly referring to my good friend Tim Schenken, but undoubtedly Tim might have taken some of the flack. And consequently, he's been brought in and read the riot act. And he's humbly apologised.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Well,
really?
And he had some money taken off him as well.
Did he?
Yeah.
That'll hurt.
Oh, quite.
I remember when Russell used to work at Silverstone, the driving centre, being one of the instructors on a corporate day. Lovely guy.
Absolutely. The enforcer, as he's now called.
Yeah.
Now, this McLaren, Alexandre Premat, not matching the times of Alvaro Parent from earlier on. Meantime, over at Santilloc, that's where you find Stefan Ortelli and Greg Gilver this year, along with Edward Sandstrom, who will be next into the car. Haven't yet got to the bottom. People are remaining a bit tight-lipped on why Sandstrom and Ortelli have been shunted sideways, if you like, away from WRT to the French team.
Difficult to tell. I mean, Stefan Ortelli has always been the sort of fallback guy in an Audi, terrier as a race driver. And with Van Voor last year was a pretty formidable, seniority and experience with youth and natural, raw talent and speed. So I'm sure there are very sound reasons. We might find them out a little bit later.
Stefan Ortelli, former Blancpain champion, if you go back to 2012. There is 25 Audi, which is a car that runs in the Gentleman Trophy. This is the Jean-Claude Lanier, Claude-Yves Gosselin, Marc Sourde car. Who did it put behind the wheel? Claude-Yves Gosselin, who is very experienced. Go back to the 90s. You find him in Formula 3000. He was a mainstay of FIA GT for Paul Belmondo's team, amongst other things. And if you've watched any action movie in the last 2 decades, chances are, if it's got a European theme, Jean-Claude Lanier will have been the stunt arranger for it. The Bourne Identity was one of his, Ronin was one of his, certain James Bond films he's had a hand in, and Jean-Claude Lanier, I think, spends more time these days being a stuntman and arranging stunt driving teams than he does racing, but he can still deliver.
I thought Val Musetti did all that.
That's a decade or so before, but you're right, he was the other great racing stuntman, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, a very quick driver in his own right, Valentino Valmazetti. But Jean-Claude Lanier has kind of taken over that mantle in recent years.
But Rona, I mean, I've seen it. Some of those stunts were just, it was too much. There was just too much.
It's my favourite film, John.
Oh, come on. I mean, what was Robert De Niro in a movie like that for, apart from earning
Money.
a few quid?
That's Marc Sourde.
Yes, indeed.
And there is Jean-Claude Lanier, discussing his next film, possibly.
You're thinking about the payday, probably more likely.
Absolutely. So 2 stalwart drivers. I mean, they're not in the first flush of youth, but 2 great characters.
And that is, to me, the essence of Blancpain endurance racing.
Great.
I mean, if you've got professional drivers in it, which of course is the end of the grid that probably we're going to be talking about most. But really, to me, way off the exit of the Scurry. Again, lots of runoff available in the car. Really didn't slow down that much even through the gravel.
No, you're right. Go back to that shot of Lanier. So you're absolutely right. That's what the championship needs, as well as the pro drivers. Guys that can come along, still race, still enjoy themselves. Marc Sourde's early days of racing go back to 1971 in a Renault 12 Gordini, and he's still enjoying his racing. Sun Zheng is the man getting back onto the circuit in replay. Formula 3 racer. He's driven in the Chinese Audi R8 Cup, 4th, I think he was in that last year. So he knows the car, doesn't know Monza that well.
And he's brave.
Clearly.
He never lifted. He never lifted.
We like this. I do like the livery of that car. I think that works really nicely.
Well, the gold and purple is very decadent.
Yes.
And a bit of red on the top just to make sure that it doesn't overdo it. Yeah, it's nice to see unusual colours that you don't see purple and gold, certainly with a red hard top, terribly often. And I can't think the last I'm sure there were purple race cars in the past. In fact, I think it's purple on the international racing colours of Egypt. In fact, there was a car called a Sphinx from the 50s. It had an Armstrong Siddeley engine, and it raced, you know, Goodwood, Silverstone. Anyway, let's get on with what we're looking at. The Audi gold, purple, and red.
Somebody's unfairly in my ear suggested that the livery of that Audi looks like the contents of my wardrobe, but that's a vicious slur, I promise you. But it goes well, this car, it's going quickly. And we've got a car that's under investigation. In fact, we've got two cars under investigation. One of them is the Christopher Mies, James Nash, Frank Stippler Audi for improving its time under a waved yellow flag, and another is the Joe Osborne, Richard Abram, Mark Poole, Aston Martin for doing exactly the same thing. So that will go to the stewards.
It will, and there will be penalties. It doesn't take long for the old penalty machine ka-ching to get into action.
Although in fairness, the financial penalties are put in a fund which is then either given back to the teams via prize money or it goes to a charity. It does not, contrary to popular belief.
Do you mean the FIA?
No, because it's not an FIA championship.
But every event is sanctioned by the FIA.
Yeah, but no. It goes. Stefan Rattel was keen to tell people yesterday at the briefing it's either prize money or we'll give it to a charity.
What about the TV commentary booth?
We're not a charity by registration. We're working on it.
Oh, Antoine Leclerc certainly giving it large, coming through the exit of the. That little additional hump has been placed there. I think that looks to me like it fairly new. And again, it's not just for this event; it's for all events to stop drivers cutting the inside of corners. You can just about get away with it with something solid like a GT car, but we've got other single-seater series racing here this weekend. They must be absolutely, well, it means they're not going to be able to drive the Ascari chicane the way they would like.
And track limit's a big issue in the UK at the moment with...
Quite right.
Yes. Pressure cans being put behind the curb to take a photograph of it like a Gatso speed camera if you do it wrong, and you get referred to the officials. And so far, actually, major race meetings in the UK, people are behaving themselves. Now,
put up walls around make it a street track. Stop drivers abusing racetracks. There's no point talking about it. You've got to do something dramatic.
And then the circuit owners say to you, oh yeah, but we have motorbikes on our circuits. Can't put walls on.
Well, has anybody been to the Isle of Man recently?
Right. Or Macau.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or any of the road circuits in Ireland, which,
yes.
I mean, Cookstown 100 or the Banbridge or whatever it happens to be. Come on, guys.
Don't disagree at all. Andy Merrick there looking on to see how his Bentley is doing. Guy Smith's at the wheel of 7. James Nash is at the wheel of Audi number 3 now. And the session has got, what, just over half an hour into the final third, very nearly.
So Cesar Ramos is out, last lap 150, which is, well, he's 1 and a bit seconds down, actually 151 in round figures, so he's best part of 3 seconds down on Marc Bassang in that similar car, but he hasn't done a huge number of laps.
And bear in mind that Cesar Ramos is new to the Audi this year, and he was part of the winning team here last year in a Ferrari.
Yeah, but doesn't he drive an Audi, doesn't he compete for a Portuguese team? Check it out and see.
On the change of Bentley. It's happy watching on. We talked about this earlier on, but it is a very modest livery, that, but it just works, doesn't it?
Well, if you want to make it look slim, paint it black. It's a big car.
It is.
There's no disguising it, and there's nobody making any excuse. It is a physically large car. But as I say, balance of performance is the key to Blancpain Sprint as well as it is for endurance. And that's what makes it wonderful. I don't want to see a field full of McLarens, Ferraris or Audis. I want variety. And Nissan and Bentley have brought variety because they are proper grand touring cars.
And again, a shot of Guy Smith in the sister car riding the curbs. Coming into the chicane. What about the final bit? Yep, another big whack.
Yeah, I mean, he's whacking it just at the point where that additional sort of sleeping policeman, or however you choose to describe it. Lights flashing. Is that an indication that he's in first gear? It might well be.
So.
A speed limiter might be applied. That's what it is.
So there they are, the two of them. One in, one out.
Now, all you need now is Wolf Banato to step out of his grave and walk in and join that photograph, and you could be back at Le Mans 1929.
There's not enough tweed in that pit lane at the moment, is there?
Wait until you get to the grouse season. You might find a few grouse being fried up in the back of the paddock.
Hospitality will be the one to go to, you're right. Now, how else are people getting on in the session? We've touched on one of the Nissans. This is 35, and this is the Marshall Zitsky Miguel Fascia Katsumasachio car. So, Chio is new to Europe, but very, very good back home. Marshall Zitsky we saw last year because he was one of the 2012 Academy winners. So the new boy in that car to racing is Miguel Fascia. But again, it's going to be fascinating to see how that all gels. There's the 38 Aston, the Mark Poole car that we touched on earlier in the session. Richard Abram back behind the wheel of it, doing a good job as ever.
Interesting, they're just on the Nissan Academy, slightly stepping out of the Academy itself, but Sir Chris Hoy, Olympic Games gold medalist, cycle on two wheels, got a passion for motor racing, about to step into one of these cars.
That's right, in British GT, yeah. And hopefully we might be able to persuade him to come and do Silverstone Blancpain or something like that.
I hope he hasn't had dinner with Steve McQueen. I'd be fed up if he did.
Did you ever have dinner with Steve McQueen?
It's not in my nature to boast about things I do personally.
No, I'm
privately.
just asking the question.
No, I wouldn't answer a question like that because you know, what you do away from the racetrack is private and personal.
Read any of Steve McQueen's books, everybody, and see if it mentions dinner with John Watson. Now, with 28 minutes to go, there is the Aston Martin 38, which is still pounding on with Richard Aber at the wheel of it, and it is 17th, which is pretty decent, and in class it's 9th, which is good. Comes over the timing line. John has made the point, he's quite right, that in this session it's not really about times. Yes, they're interesting, and that is not good.
Big problem.
That is the Danish Ferrari. That's the Anderson Jensen car.
Red flag. That's going to be a red flag because that's coming out of Lesmo. That's my corner, and that's my barrier. But where's the engine? I don't see the engine on the racetrack. That's a big shunt.
Oh,
that is a big shunt. And the Tech Pro barrier, you can see it. The front of the car, the bodywork has just been shredded. That's
Dennis Anderson, the driver.
Let's watch and see. The back end probably rides. Come on. Let's have a look and see. Oh, he just got it all wrong. And
bang.
Oh, that was a big impact. And I tell you, if that Pro-Tech barrier had not been there, that would have been a very serious incident indeed. And the red flag has been displayed, and the session with 27 minutes remaining has been halted.
I have to say, I don't remember Dennis Anderson doing many of those things in his time in Blancpain, but that's been quite a big hit.
That's about as big as you can get and walk away from it. And that car, fortunately, all the energy has been absorbed in the barrier itself. But the front of the car there, you can see the bodywork has just been shredded.
Yeah.
And that was, went in, what, 60, 70 degrees to the barrier?
Yeah, there's not much runoff there, is there?
No.
So it was a big hit.
Now, luckily, most of the energy, apart from the barrier absorbing it, will have been in the bodywork, but hopefully the suspension, particularly the right-hand side, is, or the chassis itself, because the way the impacts and cars are designed to absorb the energy, it has to go through the chassis. Let's look again and see. Just simply back end steps out. It hit a second, little more than a second, from the point when the back end bit and it shot across the track, and he didn't even have time to get on the brakes.
I was looking at that, thinking, did a rear wheel hook over the curb? I thought I saw a front wheel actually off the ground as they sort of.
You can see there. There's a. Going back to 81, where the Italian colours in the curb, then you went into the gravel, but now you've got that area, whether it's AstroTurf or just green painted tarmac, I'm not sure. But I think he didn't even get to the gravel. He just caught the curb on throttle and it just twisted the car. Yeah. And but then he straightened it up and straight in. Just goes to show that Lesmo 2 is still a corner that demands huge respect.
So the red flag flies. The clock has been stopped because this is pre-qualifying. If it were free practice, the clock would carry on ticking. But
Well, that's going to take 15 minutes minimum to clear up because they've got to remove the car, principally. He's done a good job in sort of getting all the bodywork in one place.
Yes, that was good.
So but there's still lots of carbon fibre that's been thrown onto the track. And in fact, they're going to have to repair that barrier. They're not going to be able to continue until those Tech Pro.
In this modern age, can we do no better than a broom like that? Seems to be effective, I suppose.
It is actually surprisingly a broom made of twigs is very effective in getting little shards of carbon fibre. But removing the car and what remains of the front of the car, not too long, but that barrier is going to take a bit of time. I wonder, will they actually decide to halt the session, because it's going to take half an hour to get it all, to get the new bits in place, get them properly installed. You know.
Although the clock on the television pictures has stopped, on the timing pages it is still counting down. But either way, that's potentially going to hit 0 before that barrier is repaired, if that is going to be repaired.
I think that the barrier, if I'm not mistaken, took a pretty substantial hit from a car weighing 1,000 kilograms at probably 70 or 80 kilometers, maybe miles an hour. So it's not just the barrier, it's what's behind the barrier. So once the damage has been done, it's a risk to leave it and say, oh, well, it'll be all right, you know. Nobody will go in there again. You never know.
You don't want to be that race director, do you, if somebody does? So.
No, and I think the responsibility and liability on a racetrack today is to ensure that the circuit is at the level of homologation.
Now, with the officials and the track staff hard at work, the continuation, the restart of this session is at a time yet to be confirmed, and it's such a busy timetable at Monza today that the officials are going to have to factor in all the other races as well. So for now, we will say farewell from Monza. Keep up to date with us on the Blancpain GT Series website. If the cars are released once more, we'll be back with you. As we stand, it is Audi, Ferrari, McLaren and Audi in terms of the top 6 in the times, but we'll be back when the cars, if and when the cars, take to the circuit once more for this pre-qualifying session. Remember that we have the qualifying session itself to come later in the day that will shake up the grid for tomorrow's opening round of the Blancpain Endurance Series. Bye for now.
Ancora qualche minuto con la bandiera rossa che resta esposta sul tracciato, si sta riportando ai box la vettura incidentata, la 458, che ha urtato le barriere alla seconda di Lesmo, per cui fra pochi istanti riprenderanno le prove libere, questa seconda sessione denominata sessione di prequalifica in vista delle qualifiche del pomeriggio. Ripeto, incidente alla seconda di Lesmo con vettura che ha urtato le barriere interne, danni molto importanti, vedremo se i meccanici riusciranno a riparare la vettura di Andersen in questa parte di giornata per rimetterla in sesto. Sarà un'impresa veramente difficile con, ricordo, la vettura del pilota danese Dennis Andersen e del connazionale Martin Jensen, questa 458 Italia del Inside Racing with Flex Box. Ancora qualche istante poi riprenderemo la sessione, il timing presenta circa 15 minuti al termine di questa sessione di prequalifica.
So the session is back live here at Monza, and already there is drama. We've got just over 10 minutes to go, and as you can see, the first chicane has got another obstacle, everybody having to go up the escape road, which in fairness, John Watson, is the right thing to do. You've just got no option there.
Yeah, that's good judgment by the race director to say, stop trying to drive around the car in the first chicane, just use the escape road, that's why it's there. And yeah, quite simply, good thinking by the director.
And so, with the session, as I say, in these last 10 minutes, then whether we're going to see any improvements in time, I'm not convinced. We shouldn't at the moment anyway, partly because of the yellow flag, partly because people are going up the escape road. One driver in the Nissan, I suspect, who is a PlayStation winner and therefore is a bit new to the domain, comes up through the narrow gap, and one or two others following suit, which is a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, just watching there, the Audi back end just comes around, and
so car's in the middle of the road, and now the marshals have to get it out of the way. Big heavy car, but I just wonder if something had seized to cause that, or something has now seized because they can't move it. And this is far more troublesome than it should be.
Very, very strange for something to have that kind of mechanical failure, whether the car's... Obviously, the back end came around, whether it was because of a mechanical problem. Most likely, we think it's a driver issue.
Red flag. Sorry to interrupt you,
There
John.
we go. Well,
yet again, there's nothing they can do. The circuit is blocked.
Yep.
Red flag.
With 9 minutes remaining, maybe now they might make a decision and say, well, they're going to crane the car away. Now, if the car is immovable, do they lift one end or the other, or... Well,
go for that gap in the Armco is the answer, and then you can restart.
We've got the towing hook at the rear of the car, so the car's going to be towed. I suspect it's probably stalled in gear, and that's probably what they are unable. There is a button on board that enables you to release the car if it's in gear. So that's in process, and everybody now makes their way back into the pit lane at reduced speed. You know, it's all relevant, all relative. So, they have managed to tow it from the back. Now they're going to manage to try and tow it from the front. Maybe they thought it might be in a forward gear rather than a reverse gear. Would it tow better in a forward gear from the back, or tow from the front in reverse? Yeah, there we go.
There you go. That's their answer.
But the rear wheels are locked, as you see.
Yeah.
So it is in gear. Let's hope it doesn't fire up, which is not likely to happen. But the rear of the car is locked, which indicates that somebody hasn't realized there's a fail-safe switch in the car to enable it to be disengaged. 7 minutes and 27 seconds to go. Still a red flag. And you've probably got the best part of 2 or 3 laps. The car's making their way back in to the pit lane, which they are bound to do. And then once everybody's back in the pit lane, if they want to let the track go green, then they start the process again.
That spinner, incidentally, was Sun Zheng, who we have seen already going through gravel. We said he was brave. Well, that was a low-speed spin, relatively, but the clock carries on ticking, you'll notice. It's the pre-qualifying session, so the track is closed for the moment, but the time continues to be eaten into, and so we may well restart with about 5 minutes to go. But the race director really has to give the teams the opportunity, if at all possible. So even for the sake of 5 minutes, he will say, yes, off you go. They'll get, what, 3 laps in?
Oh, no. They'll get an out lap, which will be the best part of 2 minutes. Well, it might be. Yes, they'll get 2 flying laps.
Yeah, an out and 2 flying, for the 3. So you've seen Sun Zheng out of his car. His session is finished. The restart of the session will be at 12:34. That's 20 seconds away, or 18, or 17, or 16, or 15 seconds away as it counts down. So the track is clear. Everybody is in a long, long line at the end of the pit lane ready to go. Headed, I think, by, yes, the Acuria Cos BMW, as I look down on the grid. Acuria Cos back into Blancpain. It was away last year in the ELMS, but it's good to have the Scottish name back in Blancpain.
Yeah, Hugh McCaig and family are here this weekend to keep an eye on their car and team's progress.
It is, in fact, Hugh's son, Alistair, who's at the wheel of the car as the session goes live once again. Alistair McCaig, who's like, in fact, his 2 co-drivers, Andrew Smith and Ollie Bryant, very quick in a modern GT car and good pedigree in historic racing as well.
Well, Oliver Bryant really started his career driving with his dad. I mean, their father and son partnership, which endears even to this day. Graham, I mean, still capable of getting into an AC Cobra or a Lotus 11 van or whatever it is they raced the other day so successfully.
That's right, they've got a great fleet of cars. Lola T70 Mark 3B amongst others.
Still money in property, David, still money in property.
I was delighted to see recently that one of my Alphas has gone up in value by 500 quid, so that was a great investment, wasn't it?
Oh, the Alphas are delightful. I just wish that they would revert to kind and get away from this stupid idea of driving wheels that steer a car. Alphas are meant to be rear wheel drive.
I do agree. The team manager of the spun Audi, in other words, the brothers racing team car of Zunsheng, is being asked to go and see the race director. That may be to pass on a message to his driver about if you're getting out of the car, make sure it's in neutral and all of that.
Yeah, but I mean, because these are paddle shifts, it's not like a normal conventional H shift manual gearbox. So if the car stalls or spins, there is a default button. Even in an automatic road car, I found this out recently, that if it's in gear and it won't start or it's stalled or something, you can actually, by pulling out something from the gear selector, and there's a little button you can push, and it actually puts it into neutral.
Amazing what you can find.
Well, it's most owners of road cars would not maybe understand or be told that. But if you're a racing driver, that's part of what you should be advised of when you're having your briefing before you get into the car. Now, is that Black Bull or Black Rule? Black Bull?
Black Bull.
How does that differ from another colour of bull?
I think one is an energy drink and one is a whiskey.
Which is the whiskey?
That one, I think.
Are you sure?
No, but I think. Hey, look, it's a Scottish team. Whiskey is a fair bet, isn't it?
Peat water, that's all it is.
You see the Calais Wine Superstore, that's Marco Attard's business. Marco races for Curie Cos and British GT. So it's the team to go to for a tipple, isn't it?
Well, I tell you what, I hope their prices are better than they are in the UK, because I think they're very good prices, actually, from what I've been told. Some friends have been there to load up on the bubbly for family celebration.
Now again, because everyone's sort of bunched up when we come out of the pit lane, the track very busy. The only person with clear road is the man that was first out, which is Alistair McCaig. There he is. John talked about his father Hugh a moment ago. Hugh is the man these days that owns the Curie Cos name, great famous team, going back to the successful Jaguar D-type days in the 50s and others.
C-types as well.
Indeed. And as the session has now got, what, just 2.5 minutes to go, out of our window we can see the Audi that had caused that second red flag to be flown. That's being brought back. Quite a few cars still in the pit lane, but largely the circuit is busy. There, number 3 Audi, which has got James Nash at the wheel of its 6th fastest. Yeah. James knows his way around here in the fact that he's racing the World Touring Car Championship.
This is his first flying lap in this last session, so he does a 150.7 against a 48.8, which is that car's quickest time. So, I mean, in the context and the circumstances, frankly, there's not a huge amount going to be gained from going out. Track is very busy, everybody's gone out at the same time, and other than giving your driver one last opportunity before we start looking at what we might be thinking about later in the afternoon, i.e. qualifying. I mean, if you've got 7 minutes remaining, you're not going to gain an awful lot.
One driver has, though, rocketed up the order, and it's Thomas Enger, who has just got himself from outside the top 20 to 10th fastest. So I suspect that was because it was the first laps Thomas had done.
I suspect Thomas has only just sat in the car before we had that accident at Lesmo 2, before we had the Audi getting it all wrong in the first chicane. So Thomas Enger's probably thinking, what have I done to deserve this? I just wanted to get about 3 laps in. So we're under a minute now of the session. So everybody who's on a lap will complete it, and the checkered flag will be waved. These group of cars coming down to Parabolica, they're going to get another lap, including the Nissan and the Santa Lock Audis ahead of it. This bit of the race, what if you saw that? You only got to think of one place.
Yeah.
I mean, that is maybe the most evocative angle of Monza you'll ever see.
The colours in the background may change, the course cars may change, the sponsors' hoardings may change, but it's still the same strip of black.
Is that strip of land looking up from Parabolica? There we see this magnificent corner, which has remained effectively untouched. To the left, you can actually just see what was the entrance from the banking back on. Previously, the cars would have come down. It's two separate groups of racing cars. It's been quite difficult to imagine one group of cars going onto the banking, one group of cars coming off the banking, all in the same race.
Well, the flag is out, the session is an end. There is the banking in the background, which again just adds to the history, to the legend of Monza. It's a place you never tire of coming to. And we have, of course, the first 3-hour race of Blancpain 2014 to look forward to tomorrow. So everybody has to take the checkered flag. We'll have a quick look at the top times. Their number 90 Ferrari, which is third fastest. That's gone pretty well towards the end of the session, with Andrea Rizzoli at the wheel of it. But Francesco Castellacci, ex-GT3 champion, and Stefano Gai, the two quicker drivers in that car. So that's in Pro-Am, and that's another dark horse. Again, we keep finding cars all the way through the classes, all the way through the session, that are potential front runners in their classes.
I mean, to me, it's interesting that time, 1:49.382, down at the very end, the last knockings of this 1.5-hour session, when the track temperature and ambient temperature have risen considerably, probably when they're using a set of tyres that they won't want to use much more for the weekend. So that's an indication of Ferrari's pace, only 0.3 slower than Marc Bassang's time, set much earlier in the Audi, probably when its tyres were that little bit fresher.
The last few cars pound over the line, including number 80 Nissan, that's 19th, with Alex Buncombe at the wheel of it. But I suspect Alex will have done very, very few laps in that session, because it's important. He knows the car, he knows the track. It's important that the new drivers, the PlayStation Academy winners, get the track time. And still they pour up towards the line. It's a constant stream of cars. One in that session never did a time. It ventured out. The Henry Hassid, Nick Katzberg, TDS BMW. I wonder whether that was the one we saw going off very early through the gravel, and having come back to the pits, didn't go out again. Maybe there was something nasty to it.
I suspect it might have ingested a whole cylinder full of dust, because it kicked up a lot of dust in the middle part of the Ascari curves. It went onto the racetrack, but I suspect a lot of it was scooped up. Remember, a lot of the air intakes are very low in the BMW, and it could have gone, even though they had filters in place to prevent that, nonetheless, if you do get it into the engine, very damaging.
Yes, good thought there. Lots of lovely Ferraris, Mercedes in the background. So you see how long it takes even to complete the slowing down lap with so many cars to head for the pit lane. But at the end of the session, it is Audi that tops the times. The number 1 Marc Bassang car, although in fairness, it was Laurent Vantour, wasn't it, that did the time quite early on in the session, and then having done his bit, let the others have their turn behind the wheel. Second fastest was the number 333 Ferrari, Marco Seefried doing the time, and then Scuderia Virova Corsa's Ferrari third fastest. Just a quick look at the top 12. Audi, Ferrari, Ferrari, Ferrari. Then you get the McLaren fifth, a very impressive effort by the Belgian driver Frederic Verviche ahead of the Nash, Stifler and Christopher Mies Audi. 38 cars did a time during the course of the session. You can see where the Bentleys are, you can see where the Pro-Am category cars are, and topping the Gentleman Trophy, Felipe Barreros, Peter Mann and Francisco Guides in their Ferrari. One or two that are a bit surprising in terms of being quite a long way down. Well, certainly 85, the HTP Mercedes, that's the car of Afanasiev and Lucas Wolf with Stef Dusseldorf. That, I think, is one you could have anticipated to be higher up the order. And Santiloc's car, slowest of all, which is the 25, in other words, the car of Lanier, Gosselin and Marc Sword. But all of that is really of academic interest. It's qualifying that we need to concentrate on next, and that will come this afternoon, starting at 5:20 here at Monza. It was a dramatic pre-qualifying session. Qualifying is going to be just as spectacular.
Just on that, the BMW we were talking about, you could actually see the dust venting through the exits on the top of the bonnet, so a load of dust clearly got into the engine bay.
Others just got sideways, others had the odd spin, but of course it was Danny Sanderson's Ferrari that had the biggest whack of all coming out of the second Lesmo. He wasn't the only driver to get it wrong there, others did. There was a lot of curb hopping as well. Bentley's locked up, they were curb happy cars also. But the scene is set for sure for a very, very good opening round of the 2014 championship. One or two teams have gone, but they've been replaced by other impressive teams, and so we're looking forward to seeing who squares up at the front of the grid come the end of qualifying. It's 1 hour of track time, but broken into the 3 parts, and that comes up later on in the day. So during the course of 90 minutes of pre-qualifying here at Monza, it has been drama all the way as the teams and the drivers have had their occasional moments with curbs, with gravel, and then in the case of Dennis Anderson's Ferrari, a big, big impact. 5:20 local time is when qualifying starts. We'll be back with you for that later on in the day. For John Watson, from David Addison, for now it's goodbye. Join us later on in the day here at Monza.
Sempre inserita in classe Pro Cup, vettura del Brother Racing Team, vettura Audi R8, con il problema proprio per questa Audi in prima variante che ha causato anche l'uscita della bandiera rossa, la vettura numero 55 di Cheng Zheng e André Kong.